utilize with them. You might interview them. Interview an entrepreneur, right? And you'd want to, save that, and then review it. Your goal in life, if you're an entrepreneur, is to find those really smart people that can help you out, right? And so you really do need to get that kind of education because there are real experts, in fields, as you know, at Mount Holyoke College, and your job as an entrepreneur is to find them out and try to get free advice, from them. Okay, so let me mention quick about myself, because you asked, what's my story? And I'm just not going to tell you my whole story. I would be here all night, and you'd be snoring, and you'd be really pissed at me. But let me talk about some entrepreneurial things. So when I was a teenager, I started a paper route. So I had a paper route here in South Hadley. I delivered New York Times to professors on Sundays, and then I had a daily route, during the week. So that's one way I started to make money. But my entrepreneurial thing that no one else did, certainly as a teenager at 15 or 16 years old, is I started a window washing business. And so my parents would drop me off with an extension ladder at people's homes and I'd wash their windows. I actually made a lot of money. In fact, if you go and inflate the dollars to today's dollars, I make as much money when I was a teenager washing windows that I make for the Chamber of Commerce right now in terms of hourly rate. I mean, it was good money. And one of my person I know actually went out to Aspen, Colorado, and made huge amounts of money around the rich people washing their windows because they don't like to wash their windows. But anyway, no one else really, did that as someone in high school. There's professional places that did that. The reason I did it is because our home had really high windows, and the commercial places didn't like to come and do it. So I was the person that kind of had to do my own windows at home, and then I made a business out of it. So that's one entrepreneurial pursuit. Then I went to the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, and I created a Bachelor of Science degree. That was educational entrepreneurial. So how did I do that? Well, I decided I just didn't want to get a BA in economics. And I had taken all these science courses and stuff, chemistry and zoology and all these things, and engineering, because I almost became an mechanical engineering major. But I decided that because of my ultimate goal at that time was to get an MBA, that I should get something like economics, which is a good foundation for business. So I had a BA, but there's very minimal requirements for an economics degree at UMass at that time. And I thought, I just don't want to go through my career just having economics and an MBA. I wanted a broad technology base so that I could go into all kinds of different fields in business, with a technology base of engineering, et cetera. So I looked at what programs were available, and they didn't have anything that fit me. So I went to two different colleges at UMass, because they're actually co-located colleges. There's a College of Engineering, and there's a College of Arts and Sciences. And I basically took a existing pre-med degree, kind of, most part, pre-med, that you had to take 20 science courses. And you had a major within that. And the major within that might be math, it might be zoology, it might be whatever. And what I did is said, okay, I'll go for 20 science courses. But what I want to do is I want to make my major mechanical engineering. And so they looked at me and said, that's very odd. I went over to the School of Engineering and said, I love engineering, but I can't go through a whole mechanical engineering degree because I'm getting a BA in economics, and I just don't have the time and stuff. But I love mechanical engineering and stuff, and I like to kind of get that, officially in a Bachelor of Science. So I basically went through these two colleges from the committees that have to do with these degrees. I worked my way up, and as you know, UMass is a huge bureaucracy, but a bureaucracy is only one person at a time. If you have a good argument, a logical argument, you can convince someone that it's in their potential interest to help you out in that regard, then they might do it. And that's what they did. So I convinced committee after committee. I worked my way up. I got approval at the top between the two schools, the School of Engineering and the School of Arts and Sciences, to award a Bachelor of Science. That has never been done at UMass. But then they both approved, and I had to go to the person that connects the two colleges, which is the provost of the college. And I went to the provost. I had this, big, long presentation prepared. I thought of any question that provost could possibly ask me, and I would have a great answer, right? So I give my executive summary overview to the provost of UMass. And after that, kind of looked in my eyes. It seemed like forever. It was probably about 5 seconds. He goes, "That makes sense to me." It's so anticlimactic. It's like, no, you have to argue with me. I mean, I prepared for this presentation, so much. It's like, no, argue with me or something. Ask me a question. He goes, no, yeah, no, I think it makes sense, yeah, I think we can do that. We just have to figure out how to do it, because the degree had never been awarded. And so they literally was trying to figure out, how does the registrar actually award something like that? You know, what do they put on the actual diploma kind of thing? Anyway, my point is, that's educational entrepreneurialism. I broke down big walls at UMass that no one had ever done before. Why? Because I decided that's what I wanted to do. And when I decide something, I'm pretty good at pursuing it. And I won't let a little obstacle get in my way if I can. I'll go around it, I'll go under it, I'll go over it. Okay, that's the mindset of an entrepreneur. So many, I mean, all my friends said, you can't do that, that's absurd. I mean, everyone essentially said, you know, why are you going to waste your time doing that? What I didn't realize when I started out on this quest was that when I got to that point, basically, of the colleges, what they could have said is, well, we have to have the faculty senate vote on this new degree. And if that was the case, they wouldn't have done it, first of all. Number one, you know, because it would have been a big form and stuff, they would have rejected it, or it would have been like 3 years later or something that they said, oh yeah, you can do that, and of course I would have been long gone. But anyway, my point is, that's being an entrepreneur. It's just saying, hey, this is my goal, this is what I want to do, and believe it or not, you can maybe sometimes do it that you know, really, don't think you could do. I mean, I was kind of ignorant enough to even, you know, I just thought, well, I could try it. I mean, most people, again, you know, that are in academia or whatever, said, you're not going to be able to do that. But I was kind of almost ignorant enough or naive enough to think, well, yeah, maybe I could do that, and I did it. So anyway, that's an example there. I was president of my dorm at the University of Massachusetts, in the McKinney dorm, and I was the, now don't be offended by the terminology, it's called the third world dorm at that time. That was a terminology. And there was 4 categories of people, folks in that dormitory. There were white men, white women, third world women, third world men. Okay, I'm sorry, it's not my definitions, but that's what they use. Okay, so anyway, so I was president of the dorm, so I got a great multicultural experience. And I also got to understand the dynamics of race, you know, in terms of, you know, it as an issue and how it plays out in so many different ways. And one of the things that I had to deal with was the singles policy, because the singles, as everything else in the dorm, was allocated based on these 4 groups. So if you were, for example, a white male, you would not get a single by your senior year. In other words, you graduate, you never have a chance for a single, because there's too many, not too many, but there's, you know, a disproportionate amount of white males at that time versus other of those 3 categories, for example. If you were a third world male, you were likely to get it by your sophomore year. So anyway, this introduced a lot of racial tension, because as you know, singles are, you know, a big issue, right? I mean, I wanted a single. I couldn't do it by waiting. I actually became an RA, because then I get a single. You know, that's how I overcame that obstacle. I said, okay, I'll be an RA. I want a single. So anyway, I became an RA and then became president of the dorm. But anyway, my point is that in terms of that, the racial tensions, I tried to solve that in a kind of entrepreneurial way, and got credited from the staff of kind of avoiding a race war, you know, there. But anyway, another example more locally here is I was at a summer gymnastic camp, and an Olympian came here. Her name's Shannon Miller. You ever heard of Shannon Miller, perchance? It's a little, you know, not a current gymnast, but a previous gymnast, older generation now. Anyway, she was the most decorated world champion, Olympic champion in history in women's gymnastics. And so I happened to see her in the parking lot. And so me, being an entrepreneur, of course, I said, hey, Shannon, you know, it's really, it's, you know, great, you know, that you could come here to Mount Holyoke in the summer gymnastic camp. You know, we really appreciate it. And, you know, I was just wondering, Shannon, I'm a photographer, and I was wondering, and also a gymnastic judge for many years, you know, so I had credibility in terms of being a judge. That was my credibility statement. So, you know, Shannon, I was thinking, I know you're making a transition from a gymnast to a television personality, and I was wondering, you know, I would offer to do your portfolio, photo portfolio, for free, if you like, and, you know, if you would allow me to use it for portfolio purposes, you know, I will give you all the images, you know, and you can use them for whatever purpose you want. And I thought, you know, she didn't know me at all, and I'm thinking, you know, she's going to say no, of course. She said, well, I'll think about it. And so she, I thought, okay, that's the last I'm going to ever hear from her in my life. But she actually called me a couple months later and said, yeah, let's do it. And so I said, well, under one condition. I want you to bring your gold medals. with me because I want to put your goal, you know, I want some of you as a gymnast because I was in gymnastics many years, and I wanted to have the medals picture as well as the other pictures that you wanted. She says, well, you know, I have to go to the bank and the, you know, safety deposit box. I said, well, that's a deal, Shannon. So she agreed to it. She came over the house. Now here's the problem though. Is she was expecting that I had a studio, a photographic studio. I didn't have a studio, okay? You know, I had no studio. But I told her, you know, we'll take some studio pictures. I didn't say I had a studio, but I said, we'll take some photos, you know, in the studio and blah, blah, blah. Because I didn't even think she'd ever, you know, take me up on the offer. So a week before she came, I'm on the phone, I'm ordering studio equipment. I set my living room up in a studio, you know, 3-point lighting, professional lighting, backdrop and everything. And I had no time whatsoever to prepare. The only model I'd ever taken in that studio was my mother. And so Shannon drops over at 9 a.m. in the morning, and we do a whole day of photo shoots. And the studio ones came out perfect. In fact, they came out so professional, I went to Barnes & Noble and I got some magazines. And I took some magazines like Cosmo and Vogue and stuff, and I took some of my studio pictures and I took the magazine cover and stuff, and I put her photo in it because I'm pretty good with Photoshop. And it came out really well. So anyway, that's the mind of an entrepreneur. You ask when you don't think someone's going to say yes, and you just don't know. They may say yes. And then if you don't have a studio, you get the studio done in a week. And then with a little luck, the photos come out, and they came out great. And that was pretty lucky. But you know, I did my homework, you know, on the internet, looking, okay, how do you do this, you know, kind of thing. So anyway, that's the mindset of an entrepreneur. And finally, in terms of Mount Holyoke and South Hadley, I do anything multimedia based. I make books, I do et cetera. So a number of years ago, members of our 250th anniversary celebration group asked for me to do a calendar, you know, like a wall calendar that they could use as a promotional for our 250th anniversary celebration in the town of South Hadley. And so I said, yeah, sure, you know, I'll volunteer. I figured, yeah, it's a weekend project, you know, take 12 photographs, maybe scan some historical ones, and, you know, put them in a calendar and, you know, hand it off, and everyone's happy. Well, unfortunately, I'm the type of guy that I started doing my homework about the 250th, and I looked at the 200th and 150, and both had books that were made. The 150th celebration and the 200th. And I said, well, who's making a book? And they all look at me and said, what book? What are you talking about? Well, there's precedent here. Every 50 years we make a book, you know, about the town celebration. Anyway, make a long story short, I made a book. I spent over 2,500 volunteer hours. 2,500. That's a whole year at 40-hour a week, basically. I would go to STCC, I'd teach my class, I'd come home, and I basically did a second shift literally every night for a year. Literally every day. I did not take one day off. And at the end of it, I accomplished probably the nicest, you know, kind of small town book that I've seen in the country, because that's the type of thing I do. When I determine I'm going to do something, I do it. So I raised over about $40,000 to pay for it, went through our businesses, and I actually took about 3,000 faces out of a town of 17,000 are in here. So about 1 out of 5 people that lived in South Hadley 10 years ago is in this book. Certainly. Let me just show one thing. So this is the first book I did. And so one of the things is, again, I don't know how naive I am. You know, going into this project, I learned an incredible amount. But I wanted some bling in my book. Same way as I don't care if I do a book or, you know, a video presentation. There's got to be bling. So I made a trifold, and you can see there the statue on the Common, Mary Lyon, Firehouse Museum and stuff. And then I decided, well, I would find the oldest photograph of the Common out here. That's the oldest photograph. And then I go up in a helicopter in 2003 and take a helicopter photo of it. So yeah, I kind of get obsessed when I do things. And then I would do the same for the Falls area of town, because we kind of have 2 areas of town. We have the Mount Holyoke academic area, and then kind of the blue collar, what used to be factories along the river that were powered by hydroelectric. And so I'd make sure that I very fairly represented the town. I actually literally spent half a day in Barnes & Noble, and all I did was look at covers and bindings and stuff. They must have thought I was a lunatic. there. I didn't buy a book. I just went there and I looked at the stitching, I looked at the covers and what makes a beautiful cover, because I wanted it to be a coffee table book. I wanted it something that would last for 50 years for the rest of my life, and that did justice to the town, because this is the definitive book on the town of South Hadley. The other bling that I did was I thought, gee, I don't know, maybe I'll do a centerfold. That's pretty naive. So anyway, so I thought, okay, I got to do an impressive bling centerfold, because that's even more impressive than the other things. So I did the Firework Celebration, and this is our float that we had in our parade that year. And then I did what's called a double gatefold, and this is 100 years ago, 50 years ago, a parade, and then that year, 2003. And so it had some of the same groups, like the Congregational Church here is 2003, and then 50 years ago. So you could kind of see the progression of that. So then I thought, you know, to get people really interested in it, you got to have pictures of people, right? So I basically went to the churches, and I didn't go to the church. Actually, this is the only one I subcontracted. A minister actually said, hey, go to these churches and get, you know, photos of the people in the churches. What I did is I went through K through 12 systems, so I photographed every grade from kindergarten through our high school seniors. And so that's how I get, you know, like 3,000 or 1 out of 5 people in the town that lived here in the book, so that they would feel included in the history book. And then I went to businesses, and my business model to raise money was that I would go to businesses and have them buy advertisements. And some of them I created some free for nonprofits. But this is how we financed the book, you know, because when it went to the printer, it cost a lot of money. And so I had to have that money up front. So my business model was, okay, I will document who our businesses were in that year, so that they will, you know, think it's cool, because they can show the generations of the family, hey, you know, yeah, granddad, grandma, you know, had this business, you know, in 2003, you know, and kind of thing. So it's kind of a, you know, historic then. So then one other bling I'll tell you about, and then I'll move on to a more important story for you guys. But I thought, you know, wouldn't it be cool if I had synchronized timelines of showing South Hadley history and U.S. history simultaneously, so you know what's happening in South Hadley history and U.S. history as you go through 100 pages of this book. So that's pretty cool. Of course, when I think of all these wonderful ideas, it's a lot of work. That's why I spent over 2,500 hours, volunteer hours. But if I can say anything in my life that I'm proudest of, it is this book, because it's really for the people of South Hadley. And I really, it became my mission and obsession, because this is the only book for 50 years. You know, I can't let South Hadley down. I got to do a good job. And so that was my motivation through that time. So anyway, mind of an entrepreneur. Never say you can't do it, just do it. And I was very honored by the head librarian here at the time to write me a very nice note saying it's the best book she's seen. So, anyway. And I won't show that I have a little picture book that I did in 2007 in Mount Holyoke. I do photography, and so I got a lot of pictures of Mount Holyoke. I'll see you later. Okay, so anyway, that's enough about me. I got my one card, right? About me. Okay, now, here's the thing that might interest you in terms of an entrepreneur. Okay, so in 1797, a girl was born in Buckland, Massachusetts. And she was a member, a little later on, of 7 children in the family, 2 parents, in a rural area, little farmhouse in Buckland. I don't know how many miles, maybe 40 miles or something, 50 miles from here, 40 miles maybe. And she, at the age of 5, lost her dad, her father, to death. He actually was in the Revolutionary War. So therefore, didn't have a dad at the age of 5. Then she lost her mother at the age of 13 because her mother got remarried. And she had some siblings that she took care of in the farm, and her older brother, who was 21 at the time, took care of the outdoor stuff, and she kept the household going with her siblings. So she would do the cooking, she'd do the laundry, the weaving, all the chores. Her 21-year-old brother paid her a silver dollar every week for those chores, etc., that she did. Okay, so with that silver dollar, she actually saved some of that money. And she also did little odd jobs, like she would weave and stuff, and she'd save up some money. And at the age of 13 in her teenage years, after she had finished what was kind of required schooling, most girls at that time were not educated past 13 years old. You know, they were doing domestic things, or they were getting married early, or whatever. But this educational entrepreneur that I'm talking about had just a thirst for knowledge, and she just, you know, just had to save money and go and pay for additional education. So that's what she did. She became very knowledgeable relative to anyone around her, and by the age of 17, she became a teacher in Buckland and surrounding areas. Over the next 20 years, she became a teacher well known in the state of Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And she became an expert on educating girls and women during that period of time, and also picked up a lot of other skill sets that would be very valuable to her later. She had this mission that she developed over those 20 years of being a teacher. She had this vision, basically, that she wanted to create a seminary or a college, that she would, you know, wanted to found a college. And you have to realize at that time that there were about 120 colleges for men in the state of Massachusetts. And Harvard had been in existence for over about 200 years at that time. It was one of the 120 in the United States at that time. Harvard actually was founded to actually educate men to be ministers, to be Christian ministers. And so in those days, the Ivies actually were training schools to produce male ministers, okay? There was not even a thought that a woman would be, you know, a religious leader at that period of time. There's also not a thought that a woman could even do any kind of science, you know, like chemistry or physics or something like that. Well, this entrepreneur, you know, certainly wouldn't, you know, agree with that. So she was both a very godly woman, a very driven Christian woman, and also a person driven to achieve high levels of education. So she, for instance, paid for a lot of education, and she actually paid for a course at Amherst College. She so impressed the president of Amherst College and so impressed religious leaders in this area that they became supportive of her, which again, you have to put yourself in the early 1800s, that women did not do any kind of higher education. Their brains weren't even capable of doing, you know, science, was the feeling at that time. And none of them certainly were going to be a religious leader like a minister or something like that. But anyway, this entrepreneur was so convincing, had so much conviction, and worked so hard that she just couldn't help but to be respected by the, you know, patriarchal society. So anyway, she, of course, in 1837, her dream became true, because a bunch of benevolent gentlemen who, yes, were very sexist at the time and patriarchal, had so much admiration for her religious conviction and her attainment of science courses that she was proficient in, that when she was traveling around thousands of miles over those period of 20 years starting to collect money for her dream, she would go around and literally go and stop at a farmer and tell him, you know, well, this is what I think we should do, and this is my dream and stuff, and that farmer may give her, oh, I don't know, maybe a penny, and she would go around and collect pennies. She would collect dollars, and she'd collect it in this little bag, this little velvet bag that you will find if you look online pertaining to this educational entrepreneur. But anyway, as you may guess, this educational entrepreneur I'm talking about is Mary Lyon, who founded the college in 1837. And so basically, she came from a rural area with no parents, raised her own money to educate herself, broke incredible barriers, not just scientific barriers for women that, you know, were not broken, but also religious areas at the time to found this college. And so one of the things one of the things actually, a quote that I use in this book is, who we are is who we were. That's a quote from John Quincy Adams, a president who was the son of John Adams, second president of the United States. Who we are is who we were, meaning that I am my father, you know, my grandmother, my whoever, right? Who I am is who we were, whether it's a society that you live in or your genealogy. And so I would argue that all of you are actually a legacy of Mary Lyon, the educational entrepreneur extraordinaire. And I highly recommend that you read this book. It's a biography about Mary Lyon, and it's called Opening the Gates by Elizabeth Alden Green. And you will read some of the things I mentioned about, and you will learn the story of this incredible educational entrepreneur extraordinaire. And I mean that so sincerely. I almost tear up when I talk about it, and I don't when I'm around students, by the way. I'm like one tough ass in my classes, but but really, I mean, if you want to know a remarkable story of a woman, read about Mary Lyon. I guarantee you'll be impressed. You may or may not agree with her religious views or that kind of stuff, but you will be amazed at her accomplishments, what she did in her lifetime. Sometimes I'll ask librarians and stuff, so who do you think is the most impressive woman in United States history? And someone will say, oh, well, not someone, a particular one I'm thinking of, will say, oh, well, I don't know, maybe Eleanor Roosevelt. Oh, no, she can't hold a candle to Mary Lyon, not a candle. You know, she's a product of privilege. Mary Lyon is a product of a farm, you know, and with no parents, and saving her money and going around at a time traveling thousands of miles when a woman was not supposed to go unescorted. You know, she would go, let's say, in a stagecoach and go around by herself, you know, collecting this money on this mission that she had to found this college. And so, you know, if you want to learn about a real pioneer, I would learn about Mary Lyon, and you'll also learn more about yourself that way too. Anyway, that's what I had to say about that. Any questions?
Well, first, thank you so much for telling us this story today. Also, can you give a little claps for
Thank you. So I was trying to, you know, kind of do a, you know, entrepreneurial kind of, you know, about myself as well as Mary Lyon, because she really was the first Mount Holyoke entrepreneur. So.
We never really thought Mary Lyon in that way, so
Yeah.
it's a fresh perspective.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's, you know, again, I mean, where she came from is just extraordinary. And she, many institutions, colleges, are founded by a number of different people, you know, a group of people, let's say. If it wasn't for Mary Lyon, this would not exist. There's just no question. You know, it would not, period. And if it wasn't for South Hadley being receptive to her, then it wouldn't be in South Hadley. She would have done it wherever. I mean, she would have got it done because she's that type of person. But it wouldn't have been in South Hadley unless there were some relatively enlightened, benevolent gentlemen, they for some reason call them, that, you know, it really was her just religious conviction that just, you know, just struck them, you know, their attention. It's like, you know, her sincerity, her kind of like, you know, Mother Teresa type. You know, it's just like, whoa, okay, you know, I may or may not be Catholic, Mother Teresa, but wow, I mean, that person just has this, you know, incredible presence, you know, and conviction that you just cannot ignore. And that's what Mary Lyon was like. And so anyway, the last one I'll leave you with in terms of Mary Lyon, go back to my green card, is here, because you always hear these quotes, you know, the fear one and stuff, but I always like this one of Mary Lyon. It's go forward, attempt great things, accomplish great things. So, you know, in my life, it's like, go forward, you know, try to get a degree that's never been done at UMass. You know, hey, what's the worst I can say? No, right? Well, guess what? They said yes. Or, you know, if I have this kind of dream that I'm going to make the best local history book that's been made, you know, you never know. You might get it accomplished. And I'm not saying it is, by the way. I'm just saying, you know, but that's, I want it to be the best. Because if I associate my name with something, I'm going to make sure it's good. It's quality. And it satisfies my audience. So anyway, whether it's a book or whatever. Anyway, any questions, anything? Or would you like some tips about careers or entrepreneurial type things?
Slightly unrelated, but am I allowed to move my head?
Yes, you have been so good.
I'm really keeping
Oh
really
my
still.
goodness.
I didn't know I
Yeah.
was allowed to move.
I so hope it's recording, actually. I don't even know if it's recording. Do you see a red light up there? I should actually look. It would be. It would. Okay. Oh, I meant to tell you that. That's normal. Could you? I think it is. Yeah. I think you've done enough there.
Okay.
And
'Cause
I really don't, want you to think like I'm totally self-obsessed or something, with selfies or whatever. But I do want you to remember about the video part, because I really think it's really essential for your career, to be able to record, see yourself, on video, and have someone that knows what they're doing critique you, and not just in a 90-second competition. Because that will determine that kind of the potential for your career. And also for interpersonally, you want to meet that person that, you want a long-term relationship with, your odds are much better if you communicate well, if you present yourself well. And I'm just amazed that some people really don't even have the basics down. It's just like, whoa. The human brain is such that within a microsecond, when you meet someone for the first time, you actually subconsciously evaluate if they're trustworthy or not in a microsecond. Is that kind of scary? So you do hardly even have any control over that. But literally, they've done brain studies on that. So that's what really freaked me out. I mean, I knew that you almost instantaneously make a first impression on someone. And it's very difficult to overcome a bad first impression. So I tell my students, like, when I, and sometimes I do this just to, really kind of annoy them. But I'll be out in the hallway before the first class of the semester, and I will observe them coming into my class for the first time, because I want to then be able to tell them in the first lecture that, you've already made a first impression on me, and you haven't even opened your mouth yet. But, and you can't change that first impression. So, you probably will hope it would be good, right? Because literally, someone's body language walking down the hallway, what's their dress, how are they personally groomed, all those type of things. I guarantee you everyone makes an assessment of it. I've never met anyone in my life that doesn't. I've met a huge number of academic people who are academic idealists who say, oh, I don't really judge a person based on their appearance and all that. Bullshit. Everyone does. I have not met a human that does not. You can't help it. The same way as if you look at a painting, do you like that, painting or not? You make an assessment. And the same with people. It's just that only a certain percent of people and a small percent are intellectually honest to admit it. They have enough intellectual, self-assessment integrity that they can be honest. And so, and this is actually interesting more for kind of foreign students, for example, that I teach people that if you have an appearance that would not be your standard average kind of American appearance or whatever, or accent or whatever, that if you're giving a presentation, you usually want to explain where you're from, and some of your story. Because unfortunately, this is true too, is that people are scared of the unknown. So if you look different or whatever, than their expectation of comfortableness is, then one way to proactively change that is to explain it. So you tell your story. You say, well, I'm from South Korea, and you explain it, and then it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. But some people, everyone discriminates. I hate to say, hate to burst anyone's bubble here that pretends, in ideal land academia that everyone discriminates. And so you got to realize that, but then you can turn it to your advantage, because any good story about anything related to your career can be made to your advantage. You just have to figure out how to explain it, to take what could be a weakness, not because of you, but because of the perception by other people, that could be a weakness, you can make it into a strength. And sometimes you have to proactively. And the same is true, I think, in entrepreneurial areas, is that, you first of all have to know your strengths and weaknesses, and then you have to know how to explain a weakness could actually be perceived as a strength. Because obviously that's, a thing that people do is they say, oh, well, yeah, the person seems good in that, but, in this they're, you know. And so, as opposed to many people avoid explaining their weaknesses, you know, and stuff, which makes sense, right? You don't want to lead with your weakness, you know, as opposed to your strength, whether it's on a resume or in person. But you're always going to have to explain it to some degree. So I always, you know, advise people, don't shy away from, you know, having a good response to what might be one of your weaknesses. And the other thing of career-wise I'd mention is that, you know, you think of, you're competing, right, with everyone else in various contexts, right? You're applying for a job, you're giving a presentation, whatever the case may be. So you got to know your strength and weakness. So let's say your strength could be what? Let's say, what could be a strength that would either be on a resume or in a presentation that would be easy for someone to understand and quantify? What might be a strength? Experience, okay. Even something more definitive, though, that's kind of a degree, yes. But here's the thing, how many people have that same degree? So in other words, if 50 MBAs are applying for something,
What makes you different?
What makes you different, right? So now if you have the MBA and you have the 4.0, okay, then there's a smaller subset, right? There's only a certain subset that have an MBA and have a 4.0. And then, okay, you know, what school is it from? Is it from Harvard? Is it from UMass? You know, where is it? Okay, but if you, as a person, don't have the 4.0 or whatever, then you can't compete with the other resume on an academic basis, right? Direct head-on. If you don't have relevant experience, you know, you're getting out of college, you probably don't have the relevant experience unless you had some good internships and that kind of stuff. So you can't compete on experience. So then what does that leave?
Networking.
Yeah. And you, specifically you, because no one can duplicate you.
Yeah.
So you really have to, you know, you obviously have to, you know, you have to get good enough grades to get a degree and pass and that kind of stuff. But but if your strength is an academic, then you don't lead with that. You know, if it is, obviously, if you have the 4.0, okay, then everyone in the room understands, okay, this person's a hard worker, they're obviously intelligent, you know, check, check, okay. But then it still comes down to you. Why you? You know, because if it's like a job at Google or something, you know, there's outrageous competition, right? You know, they get to handpick, you know, the top in the world, right? So you're going to have 4.0s, you're going to have that kind of stuff. So you have to compete some other way. Sometimes that other way is merely your passion to do what you want to do, your enthusiasm, your presentation, your enthusiasm, your story, your presentation bling. You know, it's unusual, you know, or something. You have to stand out because at the end of the day, when they're reviewing 10 resumes, you know, paper resumes, let's say, you know, conventional, traditional, you know, 15 resumes, how are you going to stand out, you know? Or if you're presenting to them or interviewing, how do you stand out at the end of the day? You know, that's what matters, and it has to be you, right? I mean, it has to be characteristics of you because they're hiring you. One of the techniques you always use is show appreciation to your audience, you know, whether that's in writing or in a presentation. So how would you, if you're giving a presentation, how would one of the things that you might start out in a presentation to someone, which I should have tonight if it was kind of more formal presentation?
Thank you for coming and listening to us.
Thank you, yeah. Thank you for the opportunity of giving me the opportunity to be here tonight. I really appreciate it, you know. You know, so don't you feel good when I say that? Of course you do, because people like to be thanked. And guess what? What might you do at the end of your presentation? Thank you for listening. Thank you so much for, you know, videotaping me, you know. It's like, oh, I can't stand looking at the bald guy for another minute. Please take these away. But, you know, it's show sincere gratitude. And you should have gratitude. If you're going to a job interview, hey, I mean, you made the cut to get the interview. That's pretty good, right? Show sincere appreciation. It always works. It works in every culture, every audience almost in the world. You know, is show the appreciation. Think of ways that you can show more appreciation to the audience. If you want to go work at a particular company, let's say Google or whatever, then, you know, if you're in front of Google interviewing, then obviously you're going to say a lot of nice things about Google, right? You know, and just say, oh, so amazing how Paige and Bryn or whatever their names are. Oh, you know, I mean, it's just amazing how they started this and you know, how far it's gone. You know. But, you know, don't kiss ass. But, you know, if it's sincere, you know, give some sincere appreciation. And because ultimately, what's your goal? Your goal at the end of your presentation is emotional. It's for them to like you. You know, if you want to get a job, it's, you know, these people are going to be your, let's say I'm trying to get the job, right? You know, you are the Google, you know, interviewing panel, you know, human resources, particular department, whatever. Then you know, you got to make them feel good at the end of it. So you got to say nice things about essentially your audience members. If you can, you find out who's going to be there, right? You ask, you know, oh, okay, interviews for when? Oh, okay, 9:30, okay. But could you, you know, would you mind just telling me, you know, who I might expect on the interview panel? You know, who might be there? And then you do your homework on social media, of course, you know, LinkedIn, et cetera, and you find out everything about them. You find out their dog's name, you know. You find out, you know, the beauty today is it is so easy to do your homework and research. It is so easy. I mean, you know, back in the dinosaur days when I was, you know, doing it, it's like it was hard to get information. You know, it was hard to get information about, you know, that type of stuff. And now it's just like, you know, okay, LinkedIn, okay, so hey, this person does this, you know, what's their passion? It's, I don't know, building Habitat for Humanity houses or something. You know, maybe that's their passion. So, yeah, absolutely, you know. And yeah, I mean, yeah, you have to be careful, yeah, because you don't want to, you know, make them feel like you've been stalking them, you know. But you know, there's a fine line between, you know, kind of making them feel comfortable with you, you know. But ultimately, guess what? If one of those people is going to be your supervisor, stuff, they're going to be working with you, you know, a lot of hours. They want to like you, okay? You know, they will sacrifice the 4.0. They will sacrifice the experience. You know, if that 4.0 seems like an asshole, if that person, you know, that has the experience, you know, just doesn't seem right, they will sacrifice those things because they like you. And I can give you a personal example. I was on a hiring committee for our local cable studio station here. And so my job was to actually ask them questions about computers and Facebook and all that. You know, I'd ask them, so do you have a Facebook account? Would you mind if I looked at it? And like every candidate is like, oh. You know, it's like, no, no, no. And that was before the days that, I mean, they're making laws now like you can't ask them around or something. Anyway, so, anyway, so I would try to find out, you know, about them a little more. Because also, guess what? That person's going to hire you. They want to know something about you personally. Now what's happened is our employment laws say you can't ask personal information. I mean, they have this very strict stuff. You can't ask about marital status, you know, blah, 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 blah. Okay, but are you going to hire someone that you know nothing about personally? No.
Ways to get around it, though.
Yeah, exactly. And
what year did you graduate from high school is the most common
yeah,
one.
absolutely, yeah, for age
What
stuff.
year did you
Yeah,
graduate from
age,
high
yeah.
school? That's what my mom uses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I agree, and that's why the laws are so stupid.
Yeah.
You know, and they're irrelevant now because there is all this social media. I mean, you can find out so much now anyway, you know, that you couldn't, you know, before. Before you'd have to ask, you know, now you can figure it out. You know, it's like, okay, you know, okay, when is your softball game? You know, you just go on their, you know, Facebook or LinkedIn, you can, you know, find out. But anyway, so ultimately, I think that's one thing that you have to realize is that it's a likability factor. And so anyway, getting back to this example, so there's all these candidates, right? You know, looked at we screened the resumes. Oh, wow, great experience and stuff. Okay, we got to call him or her in because, you know, they got the resume, right? So we call them in. And so this person out of college, that his major was film or whatever, media. And so he had like no resume, you know, I mean, compared to the other seasoned, experienced ones, you know, so. He's lucky he even made it their paper or made it to the interview, but he did just because he had a South Hadley connection. And we figured, okay, you know, he'll like to be, you know, nice about South Hadley because he has family ties here. So we invited him in for an interview. And so at the end of the day, it's like, okay, well, gee, we got, you know, these four that obviously, you know, much better credentials than he does, but you know, my gut feeling was he's the guy. Because he can work with a range of people. He can work with high school students because there's cable studios co-laid in our high school, and he can work with a senior center. I mean, he just seems like a person who's going to work well with other people, and I also wanted to get our social media program kind of going for the cable studio because the previous people weren't, you know, kind of younger generation, you know, kind of, you know, web oriented or Facebook or whatever. And so, so my gut feeling was, okay, doesn't have the experience, and he actually gave me a DVD of some of his video that he shot, and it was actually, frankly, it's pretty bad. It's kind of embarrassing, but you know, it's kind of college video. You know, you don't expect it to be kind of professional standard. So that was kind of tough to get over. I didn't actually show it to the rest of the committee, but I figure it'd get better. But I could just picture working with him, frankly, and also him just, you know, he had great interpersonal skills. And I thought that would be very good. And he would pick up the video skills, and he was better in the social media type stuff than the other candidates, even though it wasn't a big thing for us then. that's the future. So anyway, my point is that I went with him because of my gut feeling that he would be, he's a nice person, he has South Hadley ties, he could grow into the job. Chairperson didn't want the other person. I twisted his arm. I don't know, forget exactly how I did that, but anyway. So anyway, ended up hiring the guy. Did a great job. He's now at Elms. He was with us for about 3 years. I knew he was going to go on because that's the beginning of his career, but I figured, hey, the other thing was a self-starter. He was independent. He was motivated. At the beginning of his career, he was motivated to do new things, try new things, and so he did. And so I was very satisfied with his performance for 3 years. And I knew he was going to go on at some point. I just wish he was around a little longer, but wished him well on his career. So anyway, my point is he got it because his likability, because I, pictured him doing a good job. He had potential, in other words. He had potential, and I bring it back to actually my first job, going back out of college, is that what's now Verizon, they hired me in a strategic planning group out of college. Strategic planning you usually don't get to until you're my age now. Then you get to a strategic planning group. But they put me in a management training program in strategic planning. Why? Not because I had any experience whatsoever in telecommunications. I did have some in computers, but because of the potential, and because I got I told them the story about getting that second degree at UMass in a Bachelor of Science. So I said, ooh, okay, this guy is going to do different things. He's going to think outside the box and stuff. So you have to think of what is going to differentiate you. Some people are just blessed with like a magnetic personality. I mean, I've had some students just like, you just know they're so nice. It's like, they're going to, I don't know, they're going to like go out and just volunteer the rest of the day after class or something, and they just do wonderful things. And it's like, oh my goodness, they're so sweet, they're Mother Teresa, I swear. But, some people just have it like that, and they're very fortunate because they just make such a nice impression with their audience. That's tough to replicate. But you really have to realistically assess yourself, strengths and weaknesses, and what can be your competitive advantage, and be able to articulate that very well to whomever, in a succinct manner. So anyway, hopefully that helped a little. Some stuff that maybe the Career Center didn't say. I don't know. Yeah, yeah.
Like the advantage that you never think like that. You always think about your weaknesses first.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And the thing I tell people as rule of thumb is assume, because it's a great assumption, statistically, you will never have the best resume. It may seem nice to your classmate. I mean, you have a great resume. You have a wonderful resume. But still, there's someone out there that has a better one. And so you're not going to win on your resume ultimately, because when it comes to the interview, it's...
If you get to the interview.
Yeah, if you get to the interview, yes. Now that's where the resume is important, and that's why you never rely on a resume to get an interview. It's all about networking. It's all about personal networking. You should spend your time, as opposed to just throwing out these resumes everywhere. You should spend your time networking, and you should target. I give an example. So I have all these kind of diverse kind of things, but give you a focus example. So in one of the business things I was doing, green energy, I sell electricity, but so I wanted to meet the president of the YMCA of Springfield. So what did I do? I planned a strategy. That strategy is you never go up and ask someone for something who doesn't know you. That's a bad strategy. It's like, who are you? Get away from me. So I actually found out his schedule, found out that he was in a 5K road race in Wilbraham at one of their satellite YMCA facilities. And I went over, I'm a photographer, took a picture of him, at the finish line and stuff. Took a photo of him, and I knew one of the major sponsors of the event, and I took a picture of him. That's really kind of why I went over to take a picture of one of my electricity customers in Wilbraham. But anyway, so, but I wanted this guy to be the YMCA, a big electricity customer, basically. So I wanted to meet the president, because I never, you always start at the top if you can, because it kind of cuts to the chase. You either get rejected or not. So anyway, I took a photo of him, nice photo, and with the sponsor, and I gave it to him. And not that day, obviously, but I gave it to him later. When did I give it to him? I gave it to him months later when he's at the Mass Mutual Center giving a talk. I went to his talk, listened to his lecture, came up after, gave him his photo, 8 by 10. You know, it's a little bling. I said, oh, no, thank you. I said, you know, I just want to so-and-so, you know, he's a customer of mine. Would you like to sit down and talk about, you know, whatever? And he goes, yeah, well, yeah, why don't you, I forget if he gave me, I think it's his card or, yeah, send him an email. Anyway, I didn't end up speaking with him, but I spoke with the senior vice president of the YMCA, and she and I sat down and had a nice conversation. And then I got to the second step after that. But anyway, my point is that that was a strategy. That was a personal strategy. I just didn't, you know, send a cover letter or something. Hey, you want to be my customer? You know, it would have been a waste of time. It would have been, you know, ridiculous. You decide on your goal, and it could be a high goal, you know, create a new degree or whatever, or meet that president of whatever, and you set a methodical plan to make that happen. Now, you may not achieve it, but you'd be surprised if you're smart enough, you know, and you're methodical enough about it. And it's not going to happen overnight. You know, this was over a course of months. And then I ultimately didn't become an electricity customer, but hey, it was kind of nice. You know, I went through the various steps to almost get close, you know, to being a nice big fish. But anyway, so, you know, that's just an example of something that I encourage you to do. Or, you know, like Mary Lyon's, you know, set your goals high, basically, and, you know, try to achieve them. Worst that can happen is, you know, someone says no along the way, and okay, you go on to the next project. But an entrepreneur frequently fails. I was mentioning, I think, this guy who was a speaker at the Harold Grinspoon event maybe a couple years ago. I think it's Stan Kowalski. I sat down with him to be an electricity customer, actually, and he rejected me too. But he shouldn't have, actually, because ironically I had a lower price than he was paying then. But anyway, so he's in the wind turbines right now. Anyway, here's a guy that got up at the Harold Grinspoon. He was a keynote speaker at the event, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And he got up and he talked about, well, the first entrepreneurial project that had failed, and he talked about it briefly. The second one failed. The third one failed. Like the fourth one failed. And, you know, it's like the fifth one, okay, that worked a little, but still not quite how I expected. And so he gets up and talks about his failures, which is unheard of, but I'll always remember that presentation because it was different. You know, he got up and he didn't say, hey, you know, I'm great, you know, everything I do is perfect, you know, and comes out great. He said, no, I want you to understand the mind of an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is like never say no, you know, full speed ahead, and, you know, okay, you don't always succeed, but that's okay. You know, it's okay to fail. You know, you move on to your next project, and then, you know, give it a shot, because one of them just might click, you know, and either you'll be very successful by however you measure success, and I'm not talking monetarily. You know, it could be a nonprofit group, and you're helping, you know, millions of people, you know, avoid some, you know, disease, malaria, or whatever. You know, it doesn't have to be a monetary thing, but, you know, whatever your you know, idea of success is, you know, you're going to fail some, but then, hey, you never know. It'll click, and you're very satisfied. So, anyway, I don't want to like keep you here all night. I'm sure you have things to do. Any you know, other questions or? So the thing I'm trying to drive home, you always got to come away with some points that you remember, right? Video. Video. And unfortunately, because being a photographer for many years and actually photographing, you know, the beautiful people and stuff, I really feel more comfortable behind the camera. But unfortunately, I realize in our society, we're all in front of the camera, you know, and what's my weakness? I'm not tall, dark, and handsome. You know, okay, you know, short, you know, big jowls, whatever. So I have to know what my weaknesses and strengths are. So I actually have to have content. You know, I just can't look great and read a teleprompter. You know, I have a teleprompter, by the way, and I can read it, but I just can't look great doing it. So, you know, you have to know what your strengths and weaknesses are, and you know, in practice. Finish up with Steve Jobs in terms of presentations. Steve Jobs. People think he just got up, you know, he's in jeans and stuff, you know, same jeans kind of shirt kind of thing, gets up there and he's just kind of like having a conversation with you, you know, walking across the stage and stuff. It just seems like, you know, he didn't prepare, he just, you know, kind of showed up and he's just kind of talking, and then he kind of pulls out, you know, the incredible new, you know, iPhone or whatever. No, Steve Jobs spent weeks, he spent, you know, hours and hours and hours on a presentation. And he would go to all the tech people and make sure, you know, okay, is this how it works, you know, and okay, let's go through it. he would choreograph his entire presentation. And so it was not casual whatsoever. Everything was choreographed in that, even though it didn't seem to be. And another person I know who's a president of a group called Business Network International, which is a group that you might want to check out at some point, as the educational coordinator for a group in Springfield. And basically my job was each Friday morning at 7 a.m. to give a topic to these 40 businesses that would help them grow their businesses or be more effective at networking and things like that. And they wanted fresh stuff, so I just couldn't, get some canned thing to give them at 7 a.m. But anyway, my point there was that the president of Business Network International, which is about a 30-year-old group now, he's a guy who thoroughly knows his organization. I mean, he's a founder of it. He's been talking about it, for 30 years, right? So you'd think that if he went up and went to a conference or something and gave a talk that he'd just get up and do it off the top of his head. No, he puts 30 to 40 hours in for each hour of presentation because that's what professionals do. Professionals work hard. It's not just, there are the rare exceptions. There's the Robin Williams, that you think that, just Robin Williams, a comedian, he passed away, but, he gets up and he just improvises. I was reading an article a couple weeks ago. No, he didn't. I thought he was just, brilliant, improv guy. He would think about things for months before he gave, before he addressed the subject in a comedic sense. And he would sometimes investigate the science. He reviewed the science of cloning, very extensively. So when he made jokes about it, he would actually be informed on the science behind cloning. So if he was around, a group of scientists, it's like, oh yeah, okay, they would get the inside joke on the actual technology. So, pros are pros. They spend a lot of time and hard work. So my point is, if they have to do that many hours, guess what? You got to put some time into your presentations and take it seriously because it's an invaluable skill that will benefit you the rest of your life. And, you have to know your subject matter, true. But as I said, it's not what you know, it's how you present it that's really going to help your career, and also interpersonally, as well. Anyway, so that's, did I wear you out totally yet?
No, it's really good.
Well, that's what, floats my boat. I like to help people with career stuff. In my class, I teach generally Microsoft Office, okay? Here's how you set a tab. It's not really my passion. So I'll take any excuse whatsoever I can to mix in career stuff. So if we're doing word processing, obviously, like they're doing a resume, so, give them resume advice and stuff. And if we're doing PowerPoint, we don't take a test. They're given presentations tomorrow. And what I do is I have them take their paper resume, and then I have them present, like if your fellow classmates are like they're on the hiring committee. And so you're presenting your resume, but through PowerPoint form, and your classmates are, sitting there pretending that they're at that company or organization and they're evaluating you for employment. And then we talk about that kind of stuff. So I make sure every class I teach is ultra practical. So I'm hoping that a class will run this fall. It's called Presentation Skills for the Facebook Generation. I ran a year ago. The problem is that STCC is it's only a 2-year program. So there's just not that many opportunities for general electives for students because there's just not enough time, and so they have to prescribe almost every course in their programs. So, and any time you add a new course in a college, it's like you got to get all the advisors realizing that it exists and it might be good. But anyway, I'm hopefully going to be teaching that because that'll be fun. Then we'll do a little video. And 2 falls ago, I did it, and I brought in a teleprompter. And I had them read off a teleprompter in front of a green screen and that kind of stuff. So, and I would advise you, if you get that opportunity, to do so. If they have the video seminar here, which, what's it, Nick? Did Nick have that in March? Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, I found out about that just day before, like last Thursday. I was looking at the website and I said, oh wow, I would have liked to have gone there just to see, how he, talks about it. Type thing. Because, again, it goes back to one photograph's was worth 1,000 words. You can upgrade yourself in the eyes of others by one nice photograph. you know, because they'll associate with you, even if you didn't take it, right? If you didn't take the photograph, but you can use it, you know, you can put it on the screen, it doesn't matter what it is, you know, a sunset, that's okay. That's a gorgeous sunset. You know, they're going to get good feelings about you, right? Even though you didn't produce it. So that's one way you can upgrade yourself in a presentation is by utilizing very high quality photography or video, you know, that someone else produced. And so you want to keep that in mind too. And then you can tell the story, which you can tell, but you can have the, you know, really nice graphic, you know, or stuff. And certainly in academia, you can use anything, basically, in academia. But then you can't use that same photograph unless you have the rights to it when you apply for the job, because then you're trying to make money with it. But anyway, so I should let you get going and stuff.